Hi friends, glad you're here. What you're about to hear is a real viral ghost story from Hong Kong. Imagine working the late shift at a cozy cafe during a heavy rainstorm. Then, a pale woman in a soaked jacket asks to use the restroom, but she never comes back out. Watch until the end, because I'll share the eerie cultural detail that could explain what really happened that night. Story 1. About Iris, the ghost in the cafe. Iris was nothing out of the ordinary. At just 19 years old, she was a first-year university student in Hong Kong. Like many her age, her goals were modest. Save enough money to buy the MacBook she had been dreaming of, something to help with her studies and give her a bit of leisure after long classes. She didn't crave fame or power, she simply wanted stability, a touch of financial independence, and a little comfort in her daily life. So when a small neighborhood cafe posted a sign looking for part-time help, Iris eagerly signed up. The job was simple: make a few drinks, wipe down tables, and greet customers. Her evening shifts stretched until 11 p.m., usually ending with the quiet routine of cleaning and locking up. The pay wasn't high, but it was steady, and Iris knew it would inch her closer to her goal. The cafe itself wasn't remarkable either. A modest little shop tucked along a calm street, its cream-colored walls hung with a few generic paintings, bathed in soft yellow light. By day, the cafe buzzed with students and office workers tapping away at laptops or chatting with friends. But after nightfall, it grew quiet. By 10 p.m., the place was nearly empty, leaving only Iris, a co-worker, and the comforting soundtrack of clinking spoons, dripping water, and the steady tick of a wall clock. Iris's weakness lay in her skepticism. She didn't believe in ghosts, nor did she take superstitions seriously. When people whispered about wandering spirits during Hungry Ghost Month, she would laugh, brushing it off as nothing more than stories to scare children. To Iris, every strange sound had a rational explanation. A creak, probably the wind, a door shutting on its own, loose hinges. It was this unshakable confidence in logic that made her feel safe working late, even when friends warned her against taking night shifts in such a superstitious season. That evening began like any other. Outside, the rain tapped gently against the cafe windows, filling the silence with a soothing rhythm. Inside, the warm glow of the lights reflected off spotless tables, blending with the faint aroma of coffee and pastries. For Iris, it was a cozy, familiar environment, more like a second living room than a workplace. There was no hint, no shadow of a warning that within minutes her safe little world would collapse, dragging her into an encounter she would never forget. Iris's late-night shift began like any other. Outside, the rain drizzled relentlessly, streetlights smearing across the fogged cafe windows. Inside, only two people remained: Iris and Jack, her co-worker, a few years older. Their routine was familiar, practiced. Each focused on their tasks without needing many words. Around 10:30 p.m., the cafe was empty. Iris carried her mop toward the restroom at the end of the hallway. The ceiling light flickered once before settling into a steady glow. She chuckled softly. Probably just loose wiring. The cafe lights had failed before. It was nothing unusual. Yet to the audience, that flicker was no coincidence. It felt like a silent warning, a signal of what was about to creep in. As Iris pushed open the restroom door, a sudden cold draft brushed the back of her neck. She froze, glancing around. The windows were sealed tight, rain pounding outside. There shouldn't have been any breeze. For a moment, she shivered. Then she brushed it off. Must be the ventilation fan. A rational explanation, enough for her to carry on. But to the viewer, it was more than air. It was a breath, a greeting from something unseen. While scrubbing the floor, Iris heard dripping. She looked up. The faucets were tightly shut, the sink bone dry. Still, the sound of water tapping echoed steadily. Drip, drip. She frowned, searched briefly, then shrugged. Probably a leaky pipe. Logic, again, shielded her. Yet for us, each drop was a warning note, sharp and deliberate. Leaving the restroom, she noticed the back door ajar, though she was sure she had closed it earlier. A flicker of hesitation passed across her face, but she shook it off. Jack must have passed through. She pushed the door shut without a second thought, unknowingly dismissing what could have been the first true sign of danger. Back behind the counter, Iris polished glasses, the rhythm of her work blending with the downpour outside. Jack was still out with the trash, leaving her alone in the hushed cafe. For a fleeting second, she felt eyes on her, watching from the far corner. She turned quickly. Only empty chairs and warm yellow light greeted her. Her heartbeat quickened, but her mind fought back. I'm just imagining things. The audience, however, saw the pattern clearly. The flickering light, the impossible cold breeze, the phantom dripping, the mysteriously open door, all of it stitched together into a chorus of omens. To Iris, they were coincidences. To us, they were the first brushstrokes of a haunting about to unfold. The rain kept time on the street like a wet metronome. 10:45 p.m. Iris glanced at the wall clock and back at the closing checklist. Everything was ordinary until the hallway light flickered again, longer this time, as if someone were slowly twisting a dimmer. Wiring again, she muttered, half soothing, half annoyed at the cafe's old bones. Carrying the mop to the back, she heard the dripping from the restroom return. Drip, drip, but now faster, heavier, like someone had been washing up for too long and forgot to turn off the tap. Iris pushed in. Bone-dry surfaces. The sink gleamed. The mirror wore a thin film of fog from the espresso machine's steam. She touched the faucet. It was ice cold. Pipes shivering from the temperature, she reasoned. The unease didn't leave. It pinched the nape of her neck. Back in the corridor, the rear door was ajar again, a black seam spilling alley dark into the hall. Wider this time, the hinge whispering, "Jack?" No answer, just rain hammering the back awning. She shut the door, sliding the latch firmly. The moment she let go, the front chime pinged, a thin ting from the entrance, though no one had entered. "Old sensor," she told her racing heart. Jack came in from the front, rain jacket dripping. "Trash is done. Everything okay?" The chime rang. "Wind on the glass," he shrugged, lifting the metal grate to check, still locked. He didn't notice the single wet footprint fading along the tiles toward the back. Iris did. "Wait," she began, and it blurred, then vanished. Jack chuckled. "You mopped. It dried. Relax." She tried to smile, but her stomach cinched. She ducked into the restroom to wash her hands awake. On the mirror, the fog suddenly fattened, milky. As she leaned over the sink, the soap dispenser triggered. Psst, though her hands weren't beneath it. touchy sensor, she whispered. She looked up. In the mirror, a blurred figure behind her. Wet hair poured down, shoulders trembling, a light-colored coat dark with rain. Iris whipped around. No one. She scanned corners, the gap behind the door, under the sink. Empty. Back to the mirror. Nothing but her own paler face. Reflection off the door, she lied to herself. She cranked the tap to drown the fear. The water turned glacial, though the heater switch still glowed. Below, the drain hissed, a long metallic whisper, like a voice trying to speak through a pipe. Iris jerked back, spraying droplets on the glass. In the smeared fog, faint strokes formed like letters, then melted away before she could read them. "Iris," Jack called. "Done yet? I'm shutting the machine." Yeah." She killed the tap, dried her hands, willed her nerves to behave. Back at the counter, they tallied items. The chime rang again, this time twice. Ting, ting. Both looked up. No one at the door. Jack frowned. Sensors cooked. He cracked the door, peered out. Empty street, hard rain. When he closed it, Iris froze. Fresh wet marks, 2 toe-to-heel ovals, stood inside the mat, facing the counter. Jack didn't notice. He was gathering spoons. "Call a tech tomorrow," he said. A knock came from the back. Tock, tock. Polite, deliberate, the way a guest asks permission. Iris swallowed, eyes toward the restroom. "Hello? We're closing," she called. Silence. She walked the hall, feet cotton soft. At the door she pressed her ear. No water, no breath. Only a cold current seeping through the crack, carrying the musty smell of an old raincoat. She unlocked it. The door pulled from the inside as if by a hand, yet no one stood there. The last stall lay slightly ajar. Iris hesitated. "Sorry, we're closing." The stall slammed. The latch clicked from within. She stumbled back, heart pounding. "Jack!" she called, voice cracking. He jogged over. "Someone locked in?" "I heard the latch flip." He knocked. "We're closing, please." No answer. He braced and shoved, stuck. "Jammed," he said. "Give me the key." He slid it into the outer lock, turned. The latch inside slid back against him, as if held. "What the... this mechanism..." Iris looked down. A thin black slick seeped from under the stall door, curving across the tiles. The air sharpened with an iron tang. "Jack," she whispered, retreating half a step. He squinted. Backflow sludge. Before he finished, the hall light strobed, then died for a long beat. In the brief darkness, Iris heard a hoarse whisper at her ear. Close, intimate, freezing. "It's cold." The light snapped back. The slick was gone. The latch snicked open. The door inched out. Empty. No footprints. No breath. No drip. Jack stood baffled and a little irritated. "See? Jammed." Iris couldn't speak. Her throat sandpaper dry. In the mirror facing them, a pale coat hovered just outside the frame, as if one small tilt of her head would reveal a whole face. She didn't tilt, and for the first time that night, fear ignited fully. Every small signal from before now locking together into a single, inescapable shape, with her at its center. The clock struck 11:20. The cafe was heavy with silence, broken only by the pounding rain outside. Iris and Jack had nearly finished closing, yet the room felt different, like the walls, the chairs, even the lights were holding their breath. Then the front chime rang again. Ting, ting, ting. 3 drawn-out notes, hollow and cold. Jack scowled. Wind, again. But Iris knew better. She stepped back from the counter as the glass door shivered under raindrops. And there, a white figure stood beyond the glass. It was the woman. pale coat clinging with rain, hair draped in wet ropes, skin bleached and bloodless. But her eyes were the horror, sunken, dark voids. When her head lifted, those eyes locked on Iris. Jack grabbed the handle. "Ma'am, we're closed." He saw nothing, just an empty street. "Weird," he muttered, turning back. But Iris still saw the figure, slipping inside as though the glass were air. The cafe dropped several degrees. Fluorescent lights flickered violently, then died, leaving only the dim amber glow from the bar. In the half-light, the woman advanced. Her steps were soundless, but the tiles beneath her bloomed with wet black stains, spreading like ink with each move. A stench hit, iron and rot. From her mouth, thick black fluid poured, splattering the floor. A grinding rasp rattled from her throat, like metal scraped raw. Iris's legs locked, her body refusing to obey. Jack pulled at her arm. "Go!" But then the rear door slammed open, wind rushing in with the stench of mold. And she was there too, 2 figures now. One at the hall, one at the bar. Both bowed their heads, necks twisting unnaturally, bearing broken teeth and a hollow throat. A voice erupted, not a whisper, but a scream tearing the air. "It's cold!" The lights strobed wildly, glasses rattled, some shattering on the counter. "Run!" Jack yelled. He yanked Iris, but her shoes slipped on the slick floor. A freezing hand clamped her wrist, dragging her back. She screamed, turning. The woman's face inches from hers, black ichor spilling from her mouth, splattering Iris's shoulder. Those voided eyes bore into her, merciless and endless. Iris struggled, but her limbs went numb. A low roar filled her ears as if the air itself had been sucked away. Jack shouted, wrenching her free with all his strength. They crashed to the ground, sliding across the wet streaks. The cafe shook, as if fists hammered every wall at once. At the center of the room, the 2 figures fused, convulsing, bones cracking audibly. Finally, the shape collapsed, then lurched toward Iris, claw-like hands reaching, crawling closer. Iris's scream ripped from her chest, her body thrashing uselessly. She knew there was no escape in time. That face, soaked and lifeless, void-eyed and unblinking, etched itself into her memory forever. An image she would never forget. A terror that would haunt every shadow for the rest of her life. Iris and Jack burst out of the cafe into the pounding rain, their lungs burning, their hearts slamming against their ribs. Neither remembered unlocking the front door, only the sound of the cafe chime shrieking behind them, echoing like the cry of the figure they had just seen. They didn't stop until they reached the brighter lights of the main street, where the shadows felt thinner and the air less suffocating. Only then did Iris dare to glance back. The cafe stood still and silent, as if nothing had happened. But in her mind, those hollow eyes and the icy grip on her wrist were carved forever. The next morning, Iris quit without hesitation. She never again set foot inside the cafe. Even walking past that street made her stomach twist and her palms break out in a cold sweat. At night, when she closed her eyes, she could still see the pale, blurred face leaning close to hers, smell the metallic stench, feel the weight of that hand dragging her back. It became a scar etched deep into her memory, proof that the line between the living and the dead was far thinner than she had ever believed. From a cultural perspective, several taboos had been broken. First, staying late alone during Hungry Ghost Month. Folklore warns that after 11 p.m, yin energy reaches its peak, making it far easier for spirits to appear. Iris's routine night shifts placed her in the most vulnerable window. Second, an interrupted ritual. Her boss had lit joss paper to appease wandering souls, but the sudden rain snuffed it out midway. In Cantonese tradition, an unfinished offering is considered dangerous. It's like breaking a promise. Spirits may interpret it as rejection and take offense. Third, yin places, restrooms, narrow hallways and stairwells are believed to accumulate stagnant energy, making them prime spots for manifestations. Iris had been working and cleaning in precisely such places. She survived, but only barely. The dripping sounds, the open doors, the footprints, the whispers, those were not random. They were warnings, signs of something building. But Iris's skepticism, her refusal to take Ghost Month seriously, made her dismiss them all until it was too late. And that disbelief marked her as the one chosen to see what others could not. Weeks later, Iris heard whispers from an elderly woman who lived across the street from the cafe. In a hushed voice, the neighbor shared a story. Years ago, a middle-aged woman had died in that very block. Abandoned by her husband, left in despair, she had taken her life in the public restroom near the alley. Since then, locals sometimes claim to see a pale figure in a light coat, hair wet, eyes hollow, drifting near the shops at night. Suddenly, the fragments of Iris's experience began to align. The black, tar-like liquid spilling from the woman's mouth could symbolize sickness or the violent release of life. The cry of, "It's cold," matched the death of a woman left exposed and forgotten in the rain. And the repeated appearances, by the door, in the mirror, in the corridor, fit the belief in looping spirits, souls trapped in the endless replay of their final, tragic moments. For Iris, the revelation was chilling. She realized she hadn't simply encountered something random. She had stepped directly into the residue of a death soaked with sorrow and resentment. In Asian folk belief, such deaths often breed the most restless of spirits. Their pain anchors them, binding them to places and times, forcing them to repeat the same actions over and over until some form of resolution is found. Iris and Jack abandoned the cafe, but the figure remained. And in the cultural context, every detail now made sense. The incomplete ritual, the yin-heavy restroom, the lateness of the hour, all were classic conditions for a haunting. What had seemed like superstition turned out to be survival wisdom. Leave early during Ghost Month, never interrupt offerings, and avoid shadowed, stagnant spaces at night. Iris's story reminds us that disbelief does not equal protection. Logic and reason could not shield her from what tradition had long warned about. She barely survived, carrying scars that would last a lifetime, while the ghost remained, caught in its eternal cycle. And perhaps even now, when the rain falls and the cafe grows quiet, the pale woman still lingers, waiting for another skeptic to ignore the signs. Story 2, Kevin the Accountant. Imagine a young accountant sitting alone in his office at 2 a.m. Then a man in a white shirt walks past him, but his jaw is missing. Stay until the end, because I'll reveal the creepy belief that explains why this happens during Ghost Month. Kevin was just 23, a fresh graduate with a degree in accounting. Like many, he dreamed of landing a big corporate job, but ended up working in a small family-owned firm. To him, it was a stepping stone. If he worked harder than everyone else, one day he could move up. So every night, when the office emptied out, Kevin stayed. He worked long hours in a quiet office on the upper floors of an aging building, Mongkok. To him, it was dedication. To the audience, it was the perfect setup for something sinister. One night, after midnight, Kevin headed toward the restroom before stepping out for food. A man in a white shirt walked past him in the hallway. Kevin barely noticed, but felt a strange cold draft. Later, he realized no one else should have been there. The bathrooms required keys, and all other offices were closed hours ago. He brushed it off. Maybe someone from another floor. But the audience knew. This was the first warning. The next night, near 2 a.m., the radio on Kevin's desk suddenly cut to static, voices overlapping in distorted chaos. He got up, unsettled, and walked to the restroom. Again, the same man in the white shirt passed him. This time, Kevin watched. The man walked toward the stairwell and vanished into the shadows. Curious, Kevin tried the bathroom door. Locked. It meant no one else could have been there. Still, he rationalized. I must be seeing things. But the signs were building. On his way out, Kevin took the elevator down. At the ground floor, the night guard stepped in. Kevin greeted him, then froze. Behind the guard, the man in the white shirt appeared again. Except this time, he was translucent, mangled, his lower jaw missing, eyes blank and lifeless. The guard saw nothing. Smiling, he joked, "Half day today. It's only 2 a.m. Kevin's hands shook, his body frozen as the doors slid shut. That face, fractured and silent, burned into his memory forever. Kevin later learned that years ago, someone had leapt to their death from the upper floors of his building. The fractured jaw matched the injury from the fall. From that night on, Kevin never stayed past 11 p.m. again. He came early, left early, and avoided the restroom unless absolutely necessary. He survived, but carried the trauma. The sense that he had been a witness to a ghost locked in its final moments. The building's security records and local rumors pieced together the truth. The man Kevin saw was believed to be an accountant who had worked in that same block, crushed by despair until he jumped from the stairwell. His spirit, bound by unfinished regrets, replayed his last walk, leaving the restroom, heading to the stairwell, ascending into darkness. For Kevin, every clue now made sense. The cold draft, the static on the radio, the repetition at the same hour. All were signs of a looping spirit, a soul trapped in the echo of its own death. Both Iris and Kevin were ordinary people, yet their stories left behind scars they could never forget. One was a cafe worker trying to save money, the other a young office employee chasing success. What they shared in common was this: both stayed late during Hungry Ghost Month, and both faced supernatural encounters beyond reason. What do you think? Were these coincidences, or proof of the old belief that during Hungry Ghost Month, the veil between the living and the dead grows dangerously thin? If you've ever experienced something eerie, share your story in the comments below. Thank you for watching until the end. Be sure to join us in the next episode, where we'll uncover even more terrifying tales from across Asia. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss the scariest ghost stories from Asia.